My name is Kat. I'm 58 years old and I live in Placerville, California, which is Northern California, north of Sacramento. But I was born in Cincinnati in 1965. My whole family has always lived there, the ones that are left, anyways, and they were very Jewish Orthodox, at least on my dad's side, from what I know. I don't remember living in Cincinnati because I was like 3 when we moved to Kentucky to Louisville, right over the bridge from the Ohio River. My dad worked for General Electric, so he got a promotion in his job. And then we went to Milwaukee, Wisconsin when I was about, I don't know, 8 or 9. I can't remember a lot of that either. All I remember was the snow, tornadoes, and being scared and made fun of a lot by my parents and my mom. My mom was always yelling at me. Anyways, I don't have any addiction that I know of in my family, but I feel like I got ripped off when it came to emotional support and the love that I didn't get because of I was different and I wasn't well behaved as a child or later on because I had a diagnosed ADHD in the 70s, late 70s. They didn't know that then. So I was just labeled a bad kid through a long time. Um, when we lived in Milwaukee, I remember going up to the store and shoplifting records because I loved music and trying to smoke cigarettes, but I had asthma, so that didn't work out real well. And other than that, I don't really have a lot of memories from Wisconsin except for I was like OCD terrified about tornadoes and thunderstorms. And whenever there was a tornado warning, I would go take everything in my room into the basement and hide in the corner and cry. And my dad and my sister would make fun of me and they would take my toys outside and throw them around and laugh at me. So then when I was 13, my dad got transferred to California with a big promotion from GE. And, I thought California was going to be full of movie stars and rock stars and all these beautiful people because I'd never been to California before. But we lived in a suburb of Sacramento called Fair Oaks, and I was about ready to start high school. My parents had this huge house built. It was like 3,000 something or more square feet because my dad got such a big promotion. And they joined a country club. We lived in a really nice neighborhood. We had everything we needed, except for, you know, stuff that I didn't know. Anyways, um, my my mom joined the country club. She was a member of an exclusive ladies in the neighborhood who didn't work club, and they drank wine, gossiped, and played tennis and smoked cigarettes too at the same time. Um, so I'm getting ready to go to high school, and my mother has always been one of those people who just yells at me all the time. She never has said anything positive to me, and I didn't know this at the time, but I was going through a really hard time. So I started ninth grade, high school, and I didn't know a soul, and I didn't fit in anywhere, and I didn't know what to do. And so all of a sudden, I started hanging out with some older kids. At the time, my school had open campus, which means at lunchtime you could leave and go anywhere you want as long as you were back for the next period after lunch. So my first experience with drinking was with those kids, and we drank screwdrivers like for an hour straight, and I didn't feel it happen to me until I got to my algebra class, and the room was spitting, and I ended up running to the bathroom, throwing up a lot, and the nurse called my mom and said I had the stomach flu because she didn't know either. And my mom came and picked me up, dropped me off at home, and went to play tennis. And I laid on the bathroom floor for like hours, just, you know, throwing up and having a headache and a hangover. And I still liked the way it made me feel, even though I felt crappy afterwards. So, Let's see. After that, I kind of started to be a little more defiant, and I had a lot of, um, my mom just was so strict on me. She wouldn't let me go anywhere, but I had a 8 o'clock curfew. And so I would climb out my second story window and jump down onto the redwood deck and go out into the woods behind the country club and smoke and drink with people, other kids that did the same thing. So I could fit in. And some of them didn't even go to my school. I didn't even know. But anyways, later on, um, let's see, I was probably in about 10th grade, and my mom let me have a birthday party and just girls sleep over. And we decided to get beer and we hid it in the washing machine. So my mom comes in the room with a load of laundry, opens the washing machine and finds the beer, sends everyone home. I was supposed to be grounded, but my dad was always traveling for his work. And when he came home, all he wanted to do was watch football and not have any drama. So, it was really at that time hard for me to know what was going on with me because I didn't really have anyone to talk to and stuff like that, and I didn't have any close friends. But after that, I got my learner's permit when I was 15 and a half, sorry, and I got a job and I bought myself a car, and it was a little Vega, 1973 Vega. It was a piece of shit. It backfired every time I shifted, but it was mine. And I thought I was finally free. And I would just pick up my friends and we'd go to these kegger parties. And, I would drink, but not to the point where I couldn't drive. I always had this thing inside of me that said, I don't want to hurt anybody. But we went to this party, and on the way home, we had a case of champagne empty and a case of beer in my trunk of this Vega. And I went to make a U turn illegally, of course, in the center lane and overcorrected or something and ran into the neighbor's bushes straight in, almost hit their house, but they weren't home. My friend said I hit my head and I passed out. And they went and hid all the stuff that was in the trunk of my car somewhere behind the house. And at this time, they didn't have, sobriety checkpoints or breathalyzers or anything. So when the policeman showed up, he just put me in the car and took me home. This was like at midnight, and my dad was up watching Saturday Night Live. We used to always do that together, but my mother thought it was nasty, so she didn't like it when I did that. But anyways, my dad looked faked the cop and told me to go upstairs and go to bed and don't say anything to your mother. So that was what happened with that incident. Later on, I always hated school because I just was bored. I didn't really like any classes in school. I got by, with B's, C's, D's, but I ended up, doing just enough to get by. When I was, let's see, when I was in senior in high school, my parents went to Hawaii for 2 weeks. And of course, I was supposed to go to school and they let me have their car to use, but I cut school the whole 2 weeks. And I had a huge party at my house. And my dad had all kinds of bottles of scotch, real old scotch, because my dad didn't drink, but he would get it for gifts from some of his clients, I guess. And so we all got into the scotch and drank it all, and then we filled it back up with water. And I had no idea. And my dad told me later that he already knew that. But I cut school for 2 weeks, partied the whole time, and when I got back to school, I forged my parents' name on a note, and they found out, and the school punished me by suspending me. So I was like, okay, I won't go to school some more, and that was cool. And let's see. After that, I was off and on with the partying. I don't think at this time I was addicted to anything. I was just really, really angry. I would stay in my room for hours at a time. I still to this day love classic rock. but I had my records and my cassettes, and I would just close the door, and my mom would yell at me, and I would just turn the music up louder, 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 till I couldn't hear her voice anymore. And she would always say, "Just wait till your father gets home," but nothing ever happened, as a result of that. And eventually, my mom took all my records and all my cassettes. So I went to Tower Records, which is I don't even know if it still exists now, but I shoplifted them all back because I wanted my music. And nobody ever found out. I never got caught with that. But let's see. After that, let's see. Oh, I used to push through my mother after I got like 16 or 17. I had a job. She'd tell me I couldn't go. "You're not allowed to go, blah, blah, blah. Your friends are dirtbags." And I would just walk by her and say bye and go have my friends pick me up and take me, or I would have my car. And by 16, I had a job. My first job I remember was at Baskin Robbins in the mall, scooping ice cream. But I had a job and I had money and I took care of my own stuff. I didn't want any of the clothes. My mom wouldn't let me wear makeup or certain clothing, and she would call me a slut. And it's Sacramento; it's 100 and some degrees out, and if I didn't wear a high neck shirt with long sleeves and pants, I was a slut. So that's how that was. Um, my mom was very young when she married my dad, and she was very um, used to having a nice lifestyle, I should say. When I was 18, the minute I graduated high school, I got my own studio apartment. I couldn't wait to get out of the house. And I have a sister that's 3 years younger than me. She was valedictorian. She played every sport possible. She was the golden child, and I was the bad one. And so I just couldn't wait to get out of the house and get away from all that stuff. So about a year after I moved out, my dad got an offer to go back to Milwaukee with a humongous promotion, like a big, huge promotion. And he was excited. But my mom didn't want to leave California, and my sister didn't want to drop out of her high school to go back to Wisconsin because she was on all these teams and this and that. And so my mom decided to divorce my dad. And he turned down the promotion to stay in California. And so GE ended up, blackballing him. Basically, he couldn't get a job. He was unemployed for about 3 years and very depressed. And my mom just took everything from him, and it was like really a surprise to me. But I hated my mom after that because of what she did to my dad. My dad has been through a lot of stuff too. He ended up in Las Vegas working for a casino company doing human resources. And he's retired now. He lives in Las Vegas. He's been there for 25 years. Nice Del Webb type of neighborhood with all those golf courses and stuff. Anyways, when I was 19, I met a guy, and he was nice. He was super, super nice. He didn't do drugs or drink or anything, and we got married. And he was Catholic. We got married in the Catholic Church, and I have spotty memory of stuff. So I have photo albums and stuff, but we had this humongous Catholic wedding with like 6 bridesmaids on each side and stuff. And after the wedding, we got fucked up, drunk, really drunk, and went to somebody else's house, and I did my first line of cocaine. So I was like 20, and immediately liked the feeling. Cocaine was like, give me energy. It made me talk more than I already do. It made me friendly to people. And then I would go home and drink wine to come down from it. And my husband worked out of town doing paving or something. He was with the union, so he had a lot of money. We had a boat. I had a nice car, but I was bored. I was bored just being a housewife. I didn't want to do that. And so I decided to go take some prerequisites to be an RN, a nurse. I was really interested in the medical field. So I took the prereqs, and I didn't do too good. on those because there was algebra and all these other chemistry and stuff that I didn't really know. But I took an elective, an EMT course. And as part of that EMT course, I got to go do a ride along with the local ambulance company. And after I did that ride along with the ambulance company, I thought, this is what I want to do. I felt so good out there being on my own, being able to make my own decisions, getting that adrenaline, the rush that you get, the dopamine that I needed. I didn't know at the time, but I did. And all of a sudden I just got a job there. They gave me a job. So I quit all the nursing stuff and I went and got a job as an EMT. And I was so happy, and I divorced my husband. I don't even remember why. I just know he was nice, and I think it was because he was too nice. And we had a amendable divorce. No kids, no problems. We just split everything. And my company put me through paramedic program for free at the time. So that was my dream, and I became a paramedic. And I don't think I've ever loved anything in my whole life better than being in the ambulance, because I didn't like anyone telling me what to do, and I was in charge, and I had to go to different places all the time and was never in the same place. It was just, that was what I was meant to do. Okay, so during that time, I drank socially and did cocaine socially with some of the people that I worked with, but it wasn't any big deal to me at that time. And I went to work all the time. I got all these certificates and trained people and CPR and ambulance driving and critical incident debriefing and all these certificates. I was just loving that so much. I'd love to teach. I'd love to be there. And then I went to Hawaii with 3 of my friends from the hospital. And it was me. I was the paramedic. One of my friends was an RN in the ER. The other friend was a respiratory therapist, and the other one was an ED tech. So the 4 of us went to Hawaii, and we got smashed the whole time. But we had a really good time. I was single. I was having a good time. And the day we came back, we had tickets to go to a concert. And the concert was, I don't even remember who was playing at the concert, but there was the guy up front doing security. And he was big, and he was handsome, and he looked really cute. And I was half smashed then, and I introduced myself, and he said, well, come with me and my friend. And he was so nice looking, and I just thought, this is my man. And he took me to the car. They didn't do anything to me, but they brought out a glass pipe and said, you want to smoke some meth? And I said, I don't even know what that is. And they said, well, it's like cocaine, but only it lasts longer. And I said, well, I have asthma, I'm probably going to cough. And they go, no, it doesn't make you cough. Just try some. So I did. And I really liked it. And I ended up letting this guy move in with me to my apartment like a week later. And I didn't know he had just gotten out of jail. And he was on probation. And I was like 26 and he was like 29, or no, he's 3 years younger than me. So he was like 25. I don't know, but he had 4 wives before me, which I didn't know about either. And, we lived together, and New Year's Eve, I had my parents over to meet him, and he went to the store to get some wine, and he never came back. He wrecked my car. He got taken to jail on a probation violation, and I never got my car back. And it was a really nice car too, so, but I bailed him out, and then I married him. Long story short, he lost about 50 pounds because that's all he did every day was do meth while I went to work as a paramedic. And he ended up killing my cat. He was controlling. He monitored my car for the mileage every time I went somewhere. And at the end, he tried to kill me. He grabbed me around the neck and choked me. And I was looking, and I could see stars, and I saw something in the stars that looked like a cross, And I was going, oh God, that's God, please, please, in my head. I was I was really thinking I was gonna die. And he let go, and I was okay, but he called 911 on himself, and he went to jail again. And I got a restraining order and moved every piece of furniture out of my house by myself, beds, couches, everything into a U-Haul. And then the next week, I found out I was pregnant with my son. And, I was astounded because I was on the birth control pills when I got pregnant. And so I went into hiding, um, and I stopped, doing anything at all. And my father at the time was living in Lake Tahoe. And so he told me, come up here for a little bit and I'll get you a job at where I work, which is at Harvey's, which is a big casino. And when he told me it was time to go, do the job interview and do a drug test, it was a hair test. And I said, Dad, don't bother because I'm going to have positive drug tests and I don't want to embarrass you, at your job. So it's not going to work out. So he kicked me out, and my son was like a year or two old. I can't even remember. And I ended up going back, oh gosh, to Sacramento. And I decided, since I had lost my job as a paramedic and as a direct result to my drug addiction and alcoholism and codependence with my ex, I was going to go back and try nursing school again. So me and my son moved into some low income apartments, and I applied for nursing school, finished my prerequisites, and I got in the first time. And I got loans and grants and all this stuff. And I had two jobs, put myself through nursing school as a single mom. And I had my son in daycare. And on the weekends, he went to see his dad. And all I did was drink until I passed out. I just I didn't want to kill myself, but I didn't want to be awake at all. I just didn't want to think about it. And it turned out I ended up calling my mom crying, and I got 5150, which, if you guys don't know, that's a 72-hour hold because I said I was going to kill myself, I guess. I don't remember. But I blew a .28, I guess, at the psych hospital. And stayed there for a couple of days, and they let me go. They kicked me out and said, well, you're just an alcoholic. You want some antabuse, and you should go to meetings. And that was, you know, I think I was in my early 30s around that time. And I said, no, I'm a nurse. I'm going to go to school, blah, blah, blah. So I went back to school. I got in. I graduated when I was 35 as a single mother. My son was 5, I think, at the time, 4 or 5. And I did the class speech at my graduation. And I felt on top of the world that I did so good. It was really easy for me through nursing school because I already had medical background. So when I graduated, nobody gave me a proud of you, attaboy, nothing. No presents, no cards. And then I told my mom later, I was so busy giving the speech, I didn't remember the whole thing. She goes, well, you were probably drunk. And no, I wasn't drunk. I was proud of myself, but that pushed me down so hard. My dad, nobody ever said anything to me. My sister at this time had graduated from law school long before that, and she was living in Orange County, Southern California, working for the district attorney's office. And she's still there today. It's been 25 years, and she hasn't talked to me for 25 years because I guess I embarrassed her at my graduation because I got drunk with my friend because we were celebrating. We were both single moms. We got through school. We got a little tipsy. We were dancing together. And my sister said, oh, no, I'm never talking to you again. She didn't even tell me that. She just stopped talking to me. So I started a nursing job, and I really didn't like many of my jobs because I liked being a paramedic better. And I had these jobs where I was always, told what to do, and I never liked that. So I kind of job hopped a little bit. And one day at work, we were pulling up a patient, and there's a big man. He was like 6'3", was helping me, and he threw me into the wall, not on purpose, but I got hurt. My neck and my back got hurt. So that was where my opiate problem began. Well, it wasn't a problem at first. It was during the time when OxyContin was being prescribed like candy to people. And my doctor gave me 180 OxyContin a month and 60 Vicodin for breakthrough pain. And I had no idea. I wasn't even in that much pain, but I took them anyways. Long story short, the opiates, as everybody knows now, I think, were not addictive, as they said, but they were. And I continued to need more and more. And at this time, I went to Salinas, which is south of where I lived, as a traveling nurse. And I got a job, actually. They hired me on at the county hospital as ER nurse. And I was the night charge nurse. And I was really happy there. It's Monterey County. It's beautiful. It's near the ocean. It was a good job. And then I met my ex-boyfriend. Well, I'm not going to even say his name, but I met him, and it was actually at an AA meeting. And he had a connection to some heroin, and he was an opiate addict, and I didn't know that. But so we started using that together. And in between that, I was drinking because I didn't know what the heck I was doing with this guy. You know, I just didn't understand why I kept having this stuff happen to me. And I was really mad at God. I always yelled at him and said, "Why do you hate me? Do this to somebody else." You know, I was just mad. All the time I was angry. And I remember him pouring gasoline all over my house. He was doing meth too. And he was paranoid, and he told me someone came in the house and poured gasoline all over my clothes in my house. But my son's room was closed. It was completely intact. And he liked my son, and my son was like 6 or 7 at this time, and they got along. So I knew it was him, and I called him out on it. And he got taken to jail. And I went to his court appearance, and I got a restraining order. And when he walked by me, he said, "Fuck, F you. I hate you. You're going to die. I'm going to find you no matter what." And you know, he didn't take any accountability for anything. But so I stopped using for a little while. And then I let him come back, which was a big mistake. I wanted somebody to love me, I guess. And I don't really know how I felt emotionally at that time, but I was just thinking, well, you know, if he's not on drugs, he's really a nice guy. We had a great time. So we were living in Salinas, which is, you know, not a great place. It's okay, but he found a place called Chinatown, which was where they sold all the drugs, and came home with coke and meth and heroin, needles, and we started speedballing. And then I was taking these pills. I had to take like 4 Vicodin just to get up in the morning. And then I'd shoot up, and I worked night shifts, so I'd go to work, and I ended up losing my house and my car, and I ended up homeless, living in a cockroach motel with this guy, doing drugs on my days off, but I still went to work every night. And I did a good job. I was just doing the Vicodin, and the opiates made me have more energy, probably because I have ADHD, but it had the opposite effect. So I would go to work, and I'd work double shifts, or I'd work, you know, a lot of extra shifts because I liked my job, and nobody knew I was homeless, you know, living in this horrible motel. But I spent all my money on drugs, and you know, I had to go to the shelters and the food banks and all this other stuff that nobody at my work knew. And I came to the motel one day, and I drank a whole box of wine and got really messed up on speed balls or whatever else. And I said, "This is it. And that was when Suboxone had just come out. So that was like in 2006, I think. So I started looking through the phone book for someone that had Suboxone because I always researched everything really kind of obsessively. But I found out about that, and I found um, a place that had that, and so I made an appointment there, and I went down and I saw the addiction doctor, and he said, "Okay, well, I think you need this Suboxone because I wasn't stopping because I didn't want to do that, but with the sickness, as everybody knows, is horrible. Being dope sick, it's like you want to die, and I was scared to death of it. And the doctor said, "Okay, here's your prescription for Suboxone. We'll see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock." And I said, "Why?" He goes, "Well, you're starting rehab tomorrow." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I just want the Suboxone." And he goes, "Well, then give me my prescription back." And he took it back and he tore it up, threw it in the garbage. And the next day I got really drunk and stoned and everything else. And then the next day I showed up there at 3 o'clock. And that was a savior to me. I went to IOP for 30 days, and then I went to 60 days of, um, I don't know, some kind of rehab. It wasn't inpatient, but it was intensive. And I met some really nice people in there, started going to 12-step meetings, and I felt really good. And while I was there, they also sent me to what we called the other side, which was behavioral health, because they thought I had some, other issues besides just drug addiction. And so I went and saw a psychiatrist, and he diagnosed me with ADHD and bipolar and sent me to a therapist. And I tried all these different medications, and some of them had horrible side effects, and some of them didn't work. And I went into this horrible depression, and I was completely clean and sober. When I went into this depression, it lasted a year. For 3 months, I didn't leave my house. And I watched TV, but I had no idea what I was watching. And that was when Obama got elected the first time, and I had no idea there was an election or anything. I didn't get my mail. I didn't call anyone. My psychiatrist finally called and left me a message. He goes, "If you're not here in a half an hour, I'm going to send the sheriff to come get you." And I started crying because I had this beautiful rescue dog, boxer dog, that I just loved dearly, and she was my best friend during that time. And I said, "I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving my dog. I don't have anyone to take care of my dog." So I got to the psych hospital and they checked me in. And my doctor wrote me a prescription that said, "May visit with dog for 1 hour every day." It says in there for like 3 weeks. And so my sponsor at the time would bring my dog at lunch, and I would go out and try to play with my dog, but she wasn't really interested. She wanted to smell around in the woods and all that stuff. But I smoked like half a pack of cigarettes in an hour every time I went out because we weren't allowed to smoke. And I remember getting out of there, and I was so drugged up from these mood stabilizers that I was drooling and I was sleepwalking and I was having nightmares and I was having all these other shit going on in my head. And I had told my boss at the ER where I worked that I was going to go to rehab. And he said, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Why?" I said, "Because I'm addicted to opiates." He goes, "Really? You show up all the time. You've never, ever seemed impaired to anyone. No one's ever complained. And I never stole any drugs from work." So he said, "Well," he goes, "because of your honesty, when you get out of rehab, you will still have a job when you come back." And I thought, "Oh, wow, someone finally trusts me and believes me," because that job meant a lot to me. And when I was ready to come back, I just couldn't do it. It was emotionally too much for me. I was overwhelmed. I didn't have anyone. My parents, I didn't talk to them for like 5 years. They didn't know anything about anything. They had kind of disowned me, and I had disowned them. And so I really didn't know anybody. And I got in trouble where someone had reported that I falsified a prescription for Vicodin. And this was when I was off duty. I think my boyfriend made me go to the hospital and ask for it because we needed some. And the physician's assistant that day turned me in, and I got a call, and they brought me in, and they said, well, you need to go to diversion, or you're going to have to face probation and lose your nursing license. I wasn't about to go to diversion because I didn't do anything. I thought I didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, I made a mistake forging a prescription, but they um, sent me to rehab again, for alcohol. And I went to rehab for 30 days. I don't remember the name of the place, but everybody in there was doing drugs and sneaking alcohol in, and nobody knew. And I resisted that for a while, but eventually I started doing it again, and I started doing meth with my friend from rehab. So I remember the nursing board told me I had to go to a hearing in Sacramento for my license. And my friend drove me up there, and we were both clean and sober at the time. I don't remember the hearing at all, but I remember on the way back, she said, remember how good it felt when we used to smoke dope? And I'm like, yeah, that was pretty good. And she goes, well, I know somewhere where we could get some right now. And I'm like, no, I don't even have any money. She goes, well, I'll pay for it. I know this guy, and we can get some. So we picked up a bag and we smoked it, and that was then the race was on again for me. At this time, I was unemployed. I was on Cobra, I think, at the time, and disability, and eventually I got on Social Security disability because I got so sick and had a couple suicide attempts and stuff. But this guy that we picked up the dope from was really tall and cute and nice, and he liked me and I liked him, and we ended up together. And I got a retro check from Social Security for $11,000. So I bought him a van because he was a contractor, and he had just got out of rehab, folk rehab for contracting. So we moved into a house that his parents owned, and we were doing speedballs. And I just thought, why do I keep doing this shit? The guy was nice, but he was way off the hook crazy. I mean, with weird porn and all this stuff. And I think a lot of people that did meth back then would do that kind of stuff when they got on it. They got crazy. And so I did all his, I was self-employed under the table because I did all his books and stuff, and I was on Social Security and disability. And I got so depressed, I couldn't even take a shower for weeks at a time. So my doctor said, well, let's try electroconvulsive therapy, shock therapy. And besides being in the medical field, I remember when I was in nursing school, we watched one, but I don't remember it. And I said, okay, let's try it. So I ended up having about 20 treatments of shock therapy. And every time I would come out, I would feel way better, but it would wear off like in 2 weeks. And so I'd have to go get another one and another one, another one. And all this time, I started having memory loss, and a lot of it. And they call it autobiographical memory loss when you lose events in your life. You don't lose like your name or your address or all that stuff, but you lose blocks of time. And I figured I didn't remember giving birth to my son. I didn't remember my weddings. I didn't remember my graduation from nursing school, and I was freaked out about that. And I asked my doctor. He said, oh, you'll be fine. He goes, just remember that those probably are memories you don't want to remember anyways. And I thought, well, yes, I do. And I don't want to do this anymore. So I stopped the shot treatments. My boyfriend was always going in the summer to Alaska to go salmon fishing for like 2 or 3 months at a time. And I ended up selling his dope while he was gone in Alaska. I wasn't doing it, but I was selling it. And somebody set me up, and I got raided by the cops while he was gone. The day after he left was when it happened. So I think it was him and his friend. But I got raided, and it was the scariest day of my whole life. And they put my dog in a dog catcher's loop. And I told them right away where the shit was. And they thought I didn't want them to tear up my house. But they started, they didn't even read me any rights. They put me in a highway patrol car, and I was crying and crying. And the cop said, "You know what? You better stop that because they're going to put you in a rubber room for 3 days. Just stop. Don't be a baby." I'm like, okay, 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 okay. And my friend came, Wendy, and came and stayed with my dog. So um, that was all I cared about at that time. And like I said, he was gone in Alaska. And in that time, I got out of jail the same night, and I'd never been in jail before. I never even had a ticket in my life, and it was scary. And my neighbor bailed me out, and it was 4 o'clock in the morning, and I had no phone numbers. They took my cell phone, they took everything, so I didn't even know anybody's number. And the guy across the street that saw them take me and his friend put up their Harleys for bail money. And at 4 in the morning, I thought I was gonna have to walk home, but there they were, and I never felt better in my life than seeing those guys, and they were so good to me. The next day, I went and paid half the bail, and then the next day after that, I paid the rest of it. And then I went to court, and they were telling me possession and sales and all these felonies and stuff like that. And I saw the public defender, and he said, "No, no, you can't fight this. Even if someone sets you up, you're going to end up spending money and time, and you're going to get more stressed out, more upset. So just plead guilty to simple possession." And I was like, "Do I have to?" And he goes, "Well, I think that's a good idea." So he went in and talked to the DA, and I never even had to go in front of a judge. He came out and said, "Well, we made a deal. You go to a year of, you know, you have to show the court that you've gone to rehab and stuff like that. And then you won't have a record. If you complete that, they'll drop it. They'll drop, it's like it never happened." So I thought, well, okay, I can do this. But, when I started to do it, they wanted me to go to meetings and do all this other stuff, and I wasn't even using at the time. And I was also getting treatments, shock treatments, and on a bunch of meds, and seeing a psychiatrist and a therapist. And I told the guy that was in charge of the rehab, "I can't do this." And I told him why. And my psychiatrist wrote him a letter, and he brought it to the judge. And he said, "Well, I think you should just continue your therapy and your psychiatry treatments, and we'll give you a drug test every 3 months." So I said, "Okay." So I did that, tested clean, and after, it was a 18-month program. And after 6 months, the judge said, "Bye, you're out." And I thought, God bless this man. His son had been killed in a drunk driving accident several years before that. And I thought, well, maybe God doesn't hate me after all. Maybe this was a signal for me. I didn't really know because I was a little confused, but I thought, okay, well, I was living with, different roommates, kind of in cheesy houses because I lost my job and Social Security doesn't pay much. So I had moved in with a couple different people and moved out, and then the pandemic came, and I was ended up homeless because the house I was living in had black mold, and I got really sick from that. So my dad said, "Well, just come to Vegas. Bring your dog. Come to Vegas. You could stay with me." My dad's 85 now, but he was like 80 back then. And he's the healthiest guy I've ever known. He works out, he goes to the gym, he goes to the casino, bets on horses with his friends, and lived in a really nice neighborhood. So I was so grateful that my dad let us move in there. And, then when the pandemic came and they shut down everything, my dad was in a bad mood all the time because they shut down the gym and the casino. And I was already in a bad mood and depressed because I was just sitting there in my room every day thinking and thinking and thinking. So I decided when they opened up the casinos to go to the casinos and play some slots. What the heck? Played some slots. I was in Las Vegas. I was sober. But in Nevada, when you gamble, you get free drinks. And I thought nothing of it. I ordered a double Bloody Mary, drank that, went back home. Next day, went back again, spent all my paycheck gambling, playing slots, and drank a lot, and came back. And all this time, my dad didn't know, but I was also stealing money from him. And out of his wallet, he had these jars full of quarters that he had saved for like 12 years. He always put his change in. I had took half of them and put pennies and stuff in there to make up for it. And I was gambling and I was drinking. And my dad came home one day and he said, "Get out." This was towards it, like 2022. So he said, "I want you to go back to California." I said, "Well, how am I going to get a place, Dad? The rents are so high right now. I can't afford it." He goes, "Don't worry, just keep it under $1,200 and I'll pay your rent." And I was like, "Oh my God," because my dad got a lot of money. But so I looked and I looked and I looked, and who wants to take a person to rent a place that's on disability and has a 90-pound dog? I didn't have any credit. I didn't have any rental history, and I was on disability. So I had a horrible time finding a place. And eventually, I was just on Craigslist, and I found this place, Placerville, which I had been to a couple times. It's about 40 miles east of Sacramento, towards Lake Tahoe. And it was a little cabin out here in the woods. It's populated. I mean, we have Walmart and stuff like that, but it was the first. The lady actually gave me the keys, and my dad gave her $3,000 for the first 3 months because it was $1,000 a month. And I haven't seen her since. It's been almost 2 years that I've lived here now. And my dad pays her the rent early sometimes, and she said, "As long as I got the money, you got the keys." And so at that time, I was really still sick. I had a horrible hiatal hernia. I had all these medical problems. I was depressed. But I got to like decorate this little cabin that I have. And I hadn't lived without a roommate for probably 20 years. And I like retro stuff. So I put up a bunch of lava lamps and pictures and rock stars and all this stuff and dogs playing poker. that's that's the way I liked it. And I remember I would go to my doctors or whatever for my appointments, and I would come home and I would think, my God. And it's such a small place, but I love it here. It's peaceful. I don't know anybody. I still don't know that many people, but they're real dog friendly. Everybody's friendly here. It's like a small town. And I said, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I'm alone, but it didn't feel isolated. It felt good. It felt like a break from my entire life, and I didn't have to think about guys or drugs or drinking or jobs or anything. My dad paid my rent, I paid my insurance, and it just I I can't even credit it to anything else but God, really, at the time. And I ended up having a big surgery on my abdomen about 13 or 14 months ago for a hiatal hernia, and I refused to take any opiates. So I have two separate sobriety dates. My sobriety date from opiates will be 18 years in April this year, April 19th. And I have 3 years clean and sober from everything else that I did. I just got my 3-year chip in January. So, and that was from a Zoom meeting that I was on because during the pandemic, there were no meetings. So I joined a bunch of Zoom meetings. And, that was more comfortable for me because I didn't like going to meetings that much. And so I did that. And when I got up here, I had this surgery and I was really sick for a while. didn't take anything but ibuprofen, and as soon as I got healed from that, I felt like a new person. I felt like God was giving me another lease on life. I started gardening, planting flowers, taking my dog to the park, admiring how beautiful the weather was and the trees and the sky and things I never noticed before in my whole life because I was always busy doing something stupid or whatever. And I was taking my ADHD meds, which I really need, and I was feeling really good. And I thought, well, I don't deserve this. Well, why do I deserve this after all the things? I felt so much shame and guilt and, you know, just I couldn't even face people, my family. I didn't want anyone to know, what I've been through. So I just stayed home all the time. Well, this is the miracle happens right now. My neighbors in front are an elderly couple. They're 77, and the guy was always taking my garbage out for me because he knew I had a bad back. And he said, "Well, I volunteer and I go to this great church, and it's in Placerville. And every Saturday they have community outreach, and it's probably 200 people. They serve breakfast. They have a food closet and a clothes closet, and I really think you should go. I think you would get a lot out of it." And for a while I didn't, and then he came over and he said, "If you don't want to go, I'm going to come get you and take you," because he knew I was home all the time by myself. So finally, I just decided to go Saturday morning, sat in my car for 30 minutes because I was so anxious about going in there. And that's when the miracle happened. The people in there were so awesome, incredibly. And they were all about love. They weren't pushing religion down my throat, but they were loving Christian people that really cared about this community, and homeless. And I've never seen anything like it in my life. Everyone was welcome, everyone was loved, everyone was hugged. So I started looking forward to going that on Saturdays every week. And then I decided to give my life to Christ because I realized after all these, they give a little sermon before they serve breakfast, and they were always talking directly to me, like saying all these things like forgiveness and not beating yourself up and depression, and they had all these topics, and I just sat there and cried and cried and cried and cried, and I made these friends, and then I volunteered on Saturday morning. So now I go there a little early and I serve coffee and donuts and I say hi to people, and I've been going there for like 8 or 9 months now. And yeah, I decided I was going to give my life to Christ. I've been praying, reading my Bible. So I'm going to be baptized in 2 weeks, and I'm so excited. I am so excited because being born again was what I thought God hated me for so long, and you know what I think now? He was just waiting for me. He loves me, but he was just waiting for me to realize that he does love me. And I've survived a lot of shit, so I never really thought about it, but I thought, well, I'm giving a second lease on life. So I got some friends and I go there and I go to church on Sundays and I'm an usher at the second service, and I've just volunteered, and I love it. I don't make any money, I don't care, I don't have any financial problems. It's all just about love and being around positive people that aren't on drugs or alcohol or depressing, or they all have stories of recovery, most of them, or they all have their own, stories about not believing or being atheists and becoming born again. And it's so touching to me to go there every single week. And I look forward to it, and it makes my whole day. And I feel so excited afterwards. I'm like, I've got this. I've got God, and He's got me. And that is really the gist of it. I mean, I could talk for hours because I have a lot more stuff probably, and I have ADHD, which makes me talk more. But these people aren't judging me, and neither is God, and He's forgiven me for all that stuff. So I was able to put it all behind me. I still think about it once in a while. I say I visit the past, but I don't stay in it. So, I'm not going to forget what happened, but I'm not now I know it wasn't all my fault, and maybe that this is what I was supposed to learn from this. So I'm here with my second boxer dog. My first one was old and got put to sleep about 8 years ago, but I got a new one. His name is Freddie Mercury. He's 90 pounds and he's a big baby. And I'm just I'm not on a pink cloud. I'm just feeling this grace and this humbleness and this gratitude from everything that happened to me the whole time up here. I can't tell you how much I feel filled with the Holy Spirit. I've been reading my Bible every single day, and I go and I'm responsible and I do the right thing. And I don't care what my family thinks about me anymore because I know that God loves me and cares about me, and the church is my family. So that's where I am today, and I have no desire to drink, use, or alter my mind whatsoever because of that. That God is my drug. Basically, He's helping me to not live that way anymore. And that's really the end of what I can say for now. I just um I'm really glad that I reached out to Shane and he let me do this call in because it's some stuff that I needed to get out that I really couldn't talk to anyone that I knew from the past about. And so I got it out. I don't know if it'll go on the YouTube channel or not. If it doesn't, that's fine too. At least I got to talk about it and get that off my chest. So I'm looking forward to getting baptized. And I'm 58 and I'm just living my best life now.